Hey, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So in our previous video, we were able to load a class that is within our plugin folder, right? Which is very useful. But let's make sure we can also load a core model in here. Okay, so let's say, for example, I wanted to load, as much as I want to load the users thing here, I want to load, maybe there's an image model in here, one that you can use to crop images and the like. Or maybe we're going to have a session model in here. So let's try that one first. So what I'm going to do is just do sesh is equal to new session. Now this model we haven't created, so don't get confused as to where I'm getting this. I'm just imagining that we created this session class already. So let's do that actually now. I'm gonna go to models, new file, and I'll put my PHP tags over there and do class session like that. Okay, great. So let me save this as session capitalized s.php. Now the thing is, we will have a lot of models in here. We don't want, let's say if the user also wants to create a session class somewhere in their in their project. So if I go through, let's say, this header footer plugin, and inside my models I create another one called session.php, then I'm going to have problems, because if this one is loaded by default and then I try to load mine, it's going to tell me session class named session already exists, you can't declare it again. This is why we use namespaces. That way we can avoid collisions in class names. Regardless whether the plugin already knows the existing classes or not, it shouldn't matter. You should just create whatever classes you want in your plugin and it should be fine. So by using namespaces. So in this case, we're going to have, let's say, let me go to here. If I go to app.php, you see we're already using a namespace over here, which is cool. So what I'll do is I'll copy that. Let me close this. So instead, I'm going to type class one more time, because if I press this one that has an S over here, it adds some cool stuff here. Let's put a namespace over here. So this one will live inside the core namespace, because core should be reserved for the core functionality of the framework. So we're just going to say session class as a comment, and then here we say session like that. This should not extend anything. It should just be a standalone like this. We do have a constructor, but it's pretty much useless. But just for us to know that we have loaded this, I can simply do and say this is from the session class. Okay, great. So if I now go back to header footer, where I'm saying session is equal to new session, we're going to have a problem. So if I refresh, it will tell me the class session was not found. The user class was found, but not this one. So how do we figure this out? Now, if I go back to init.php, there's a class name here. Now you will notice one thing here is if I do an echo of the class name, you will see that it comes session, just like that, right? But the thing is, in order to instantiate this, we should know which version of session we are talking about. In this case, are we talking about the core session or not? Because we need to be able to instantiate it using the core name. So what we want to do is, when instantiating the class in here, we have to call it by its actual name like this, core/session. What you could do, if you don't want to do this, to call it like that, but I would recommend you do this instead. You can say something like use core like that, and then slash session like so. Okay, so once you do this, it means every time you just say new session, it knows you're talking about the one that is inside the core namespace. But this can lead to some problems, because once you may have two session classes that you want to use here, and this won't work, because for example, if you have one that says that's from core and you have another one that's inside model like this one, this will not work, because now you're trying to load both of these guys in the same namespace, and you can't have two classes in the same namespace. That's why it would be better to just do it directly from here and say core and then slash session like that. Then you can also instantiate a different version of session 2, which is inside model.session. So this would work just fine, because here you are still specifying exactly which of these classes you're instantiating in each instance. But you find that in frameworks they do this instead, where you see that, but it works because you find that at any given time you are not going to instantiate two separate classes that have the same name, even though they live in different namespaces. So anywho, let's continue here. We are saying session is equal to new like this. We have to instantiate it like that to specify which version we are trying to get. So when we do that and I refresh, you see this is what I get on the other side. I'm going to get core session as the name of the class that I want to instantiate, but I need to get rid of this one here. I need to get rid of this so that I remain, because I know the file name itself is just session.php. So in order to get rid of that, what I'll do is inside init here. So the idea here is that we check in the models folder first before we actually rush to check in the plugin folder. So this is up to you. You can choose to do the opposite. Maybe you wanted to start with the plugin folder and then check in there if it can't find it there, but it's really up to you. So what I want to do here is do something like, say, parts. Okay, we already have parts here, do we? No, we do not. So parts is equal to explode, and I want to explode this slash over here, because as you can see, the slash is part of this. So what I want to do is create an array with this item in the first section and the second item in the second section, but then I want it to split where there is a slash like this. But the problem with this slash is it's a special character. It actually escapes the character right next to it in this way, right? So if I do a slash like this, it means this quote is no longer a special character that holds a string. It's just a literal string. So in this case, I would have to do this for this to actually work well, because then I'm saying this one is the string I'm trying to explode through, and then this is just escaping this string to tell us that this is a literal text string, and don't use it as one of these that are holding the actual text. But in this case, we want to use the slash itself. But the problem is when we put it there, it ends up escaping our quote. So instead, what we do is we put two slashes. Now this is going to work. This is as good as putting one here. It's just that now it eliminates the second one as a special character. So what's happening is this. There's a slash here, which is supposed to escape the next character, right? So this slash is just used to escape this one, and tell the system that this one should be regarded as just ordinary text and not an actual slash that means something. So if this is a literal string, then it will not be able to escape this guy here. So this one is escaping this one, but since this one is escaped, it will not escape this one. So sometimes it's a bit confusing, but this is what you must do. So I copy that and put it here. So what I'm doing now is getting core on the first item and the class name on the second item. So in this case now, we're gonna change class name is going to be equal to parts, not the first item, but the second item, so which is 1, like so. Okay, now it's not all the time that you're going to have the slash in there, right? So you have to think about what happens when you don't have that slash in there, because look at this. On this one, we didn't put that core slash. It's just this. So what happens in a situation like that? So what this means is that sometimes the class, this parts is going to be equal to 2 items. Sometimes it's going to be equal to 1 item, right? So for example, when we have the class name as core slash something, then in this case, if we do an explode, we're going to have 2 items. But then let's say it's just user, for example. Then if we explode, since this character does not exist, it's just going to create 1 item in that array. But it's not a big deal. We can just say, get this thing and say class name is equal to, and say end, and then put parts in there, like so. So what end does is it just gives you the very last item in an array. That's all. Or you can use array pop if you prefer that. It's the same thing. Array pop gives you the last item and removes it from the array. So, but end will work just as good. But let's try array pop. Just something poppy about it. So class name now becomes the actual class name, and so we can do the rest of the stuff that we're doing here with that. So nothing changes here, but let me try and echo the class name now. That way we see what we've got in the end. So I'm going to come back and let's refresh. So here we have user, here we have session. So in both cases, even though here we added core to begin with, and here we didn't, we get the same result. At least we get the file name correctly. But what I want us to do is first of all check to see if that thing exists in the app folder. So here we're going to say file, or maybe let's call it path, is equal to app slash. Now we can use those slashes, or we can use the directory separator, but for now let me just copy that and say app models slash yep, that's basically it. But let's replace these guys with the directory separator here. Let me put a dot, and same thing over here. Boom. Okay, so that's the path over here, and then after that directory separator, we add the class name. So here I'm going to add class name, and then concatenate a .php at the end, like that. But of course here let's do UC first to make sure that UC first, like that. Okay, so that's our path, but let me echo that path. I want to see what I've got. So let's come back and let's refresh. So we have app models user.php, which would be correct if it's in the core space there, which is the same thing here. This one would work. This one doesn't exist, so that's fine. But at least we're getting somewhere. And so here we want to check if this path exists, first of all. So I'm going to say if file exists, path. Okay. So here we just do a require once path. Simple and straightforward. But if it does not exist there, then let's go ahead and check in the plugin directory like so. So that's what we are doing here. So simple and straightforward. All we are doing here is saying, okay, there's a class that wasn't found. Let's try and look for it in the models.php folder. Okay. If it's not there, let's try and find it in the current plugin that we are dealing with in the models folder there. So let's see here. So inside header footer, we have 2 classes that we are instantiating. One is in the core models thingy here, and the other is in the the current plugin directories models folder. So if everything is working well, we should be able to find both classes regardless where they are. One is here, one is there. We should be able to still find them. So let's refresh. And there it is. You see, this is a user class, but then there's a syntax error here, an expected token in session.php. So it did find it, because for it to find a syntax error, it means the file was actually loaded. So let's go and find it. Where's the syntax error on line 11? It's argument. It's not a valid variable, so that's why. So if I now refresh, you see everything seems to be working fine. So this is from the user class, and this is from the session class. So both were able to be loaded just fine, even though they're in separate different folders altogether, which is great. Alrighty then. So now that we are able to load things like this, we have improved our system. Okay, let me see here if I missed something. Okie dokie. Okay, so in the following videos, we're going to add more model functionality there and database stuff. So here I'm just going to put require once. I'm going to duplicate these two things. There will be functions there. I will put database. So I start with database here. I've capitalized this, mind you, because this is a model. And then we're going to have the main model, which is going to be model.php. So the reason I put this second is because this is going to extend the functionality of database from there, right? So in here, I'm just going to make those files, because right now, if I try to run this, it's going to warn me that these two files do not exist. So let's go ahead inside models. Let's create a few. I don't need to actually do anything in here. Just a PHP will do. And let's say database.php. And then, of course, we can create a second one called model, capitalized m.php. And let's just put some PHP tags over there. And that's about it. Let's try and refresh the page to make sure things are running. So require database.php failed to load file. Why was that again? Let's come back to the init here. There's functions. Oh, because these guys are in the same location, while this one is not, we should actually go up a step, and then from here, go up a step, and then come back to models. So let's do that. I'm gonna do ... Yeah, sucks having to use the directory separator all the time. You don't have to, actually, sometimes. What have I done here anyway? Models, right? Yes. Let's get that ds. That's why I should have probably shortened it at some point. So wait, we have ... and then we have another dot. So you have to be very careful here what you're doing. Put that directory separator, put a dot, do that, and then put that directory separator again and put another dot. Can get very confusing. So what we are trying to do here is ... /app, no, ... /models/ and then the item. So only we are replacing the slashes with this directory separator here and concatenating the string. Now, if you don't like concatenating like this, it's always better to use double quotes. Then you can put all your variables directly in there. But constants are a bit difficult sometimes, so better to do it like this. Okay, it says no such file. ... models ... database. Okay, so because this is a Windows thingy, it still doesn't work. So this could work on Windows still. So instead, let me just replace the directory separator here with an actual slash, like that. Let's see if that works. Still can't find it. models. What am I doing wrong here? You know what, let's not complicate things, right? These two actually shouldn't be in models, they should be inside the core. So let me move these guys. So I'm gonna open this folder. Sorry about that. I'm gonna grab database and model. They're not supposed to be in here anyway. They should be inside core. So I'll put them in there, and there we go. That solves the problem. Now let's not complicate things, yeah? Okay, so there we go. Very, very good. Now in this case, we don't actually need to instantiate any of these guys here in the header footer section. So let me remove that. Okay, let me remove this as well. We don't need to see that. Let's clean up a little bit. Where am I doing this from? Where is this from? Homepage. Okay. So where is homepage? Let's remove that part as well. Okay, very good. So we seem to be back to where we started. If I go to another page, like the login page, things seem to be running just as they should. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, at least now we are able to load classes within our plugin folders here, and we can also load CSS files and the like. So in order to load a CSS file, for example, let me just give an example here. If you're inside this homepage plugin, you could do something like this. If it's a CSS file, so you would do this, and then because doing it like this is the same as saying PHP echo. This is like saying PHP and then echo like that. Same thing, but it's a shortcut like this. So here we're going to say plugin dir and then dot to concatenate, and we'll do CSS and then slash style slash, no, actually it's just style.css like so. And then we close that with a PHP tag. So that's how we load CSS files. But instead of doing just this dir, we do HTTP because we are loading a CSS file. This is the same thing you would do if you're loading an image file, for example. However, if you're including a file, you just do this. You say require, and then you say plugin dir, this one that doesn't have the HTTP, like so, and then you do, maybe there's an includes folder, right? So you can say includes and then slash, let's say maybe that's a view file, view.php, something like this, right? Great. So now, because some of those files do not exist, the CSS file does exist, I think. Let's see if it works here. Oh, it doesn't exist, so it doesn't work. But, oh, where is this? We're on the home page. Okay, great. So we have to go to the home page for this to work, because that's the thing for the home page. And there we go. So we failed to load the view file, right? And everything collapsed. So let's just put that view file over there. So this is the home page. I'm just going to create a folder in here called includes, which will be a common feature that you can do in your, just to keep things organized. So this file, we're going to call it view.php. And then in here, we're just going to put HTML, right? So HTML tags like that. And then we have a homepage title, home, and then we're going to do something like h1 maybe. Let's say this is the home page, like that. So maybe that's the view file for this homepage plugin, right? So if I come back here and refresh, you see that over here. This is the home page. So that's how you include files. And let's see if our our styles does not exist because we don't have a CSS folder. We only have this inside the header footer here. So instead of putting this in the home page, let me delete that. It's always better to make sure you don't leave a space before you put your PHP tag. Make sure your PHP tag is the very first character there to avoid redirecting problems. So I'm just doing this to show a point, but this is not how we're going to be doing. We're not going to be putting HTML at the top here. We'll be putting HTML in separate files because keep in mind we still have to maintain our MVC system where models are separate, controllers are separate, and the view files are separate, because otherwise if you don't do that, you're going to have a nightmare when you're trying to fix things or improve your website. So since we put that there in the header footer, it should be able to change our font here because then we have loaded our CSS file even here. So let's see that. And as you can see, things have changed, which means we managed to load. So if you go to our page source here, let me right click, view page source, you will notice that it's the HTTP path we are using for CSS files. And then for our includes, we don't use the HTTP path. We just use the, where is this? This one, plugin dir, which is actually a relative path to this file. All right, so I hope this has shown you how we do these things. Now, if this is all a bit confusing, don't worry, because we're going to do an actual project using this this framework so that you can see how things are put together and the like. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.